Hey folks, I want to do a little bit of just sort of some feedback on the comments you left on sample essay 2. So I gave this to you because I do think it's a relatively good example of what I'm looking for with essay 2. Okay, Lauren had an interesting note here that the essay is a little bit different because you jump right into the scholarly articles, and absolutely that's sort of what I'm hoping for. There are often comments about how we might want to get an attention grabber or something here. One more sentence before we introduce the authors might be helpful, just to sort of bring your audience in. But one of the real goals I've got for you is to get away from, as Lauren notes here, right? The normal version of the intro of the subject, 3 body paragraphs, and conclusion. I want to get away from that, okay? One of the things we'll notice as we work our way through this essay is that it kind of drives towards a conclusion rather than here is a claim and then piece of evidence, and piece of evidence. Okay? Now, there were some comments about the thesis statement here, right? Now, what it does and how it differs from what we've traditionally been taught, most of us were taught to come up with a thesis statement that is functionally a conclusion. X is the case, right? This is good because of A, B, and C. That's really a conclusion, not a thesis. A thesis should sort of like lay out the question you're looking to investigate, a hypothesis, something a little bit less concrete, right? The purpose of the paper is to investigate this question. So Noel here notes that the introduction of the question is pretty good, right? It's easy to see how they came to different conclusions, even if it's hard to know who is quote-unquote right. Okay? Kayla noted that was an out-of-the-ordinary thesis as well, and I do think this is very much different from what we typically see in what we've typically been taught, but it's, I think, a more natural style of writing. One other thing you're going to see here is that there's a little bit of context about the topic of these studies, but there's not a ton of like, well, scholarly articles, we presume they're really good, blah, 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 right? There's not any of this big, broad, fluffy language. We do want to get into this, okay? We need to contextualize the situations. We need to understand that some studies show one thing and other studies show another, if that's what we're seeing here. Okay, so the other thing that we've got here, right, is a lot of comments about how the text here goes into the detail of what kind of a study it is, and some specific explanations of the findings, okay? This is a place where it's really important to practice the skills you've gained writing annotations over the course of the semester and be able to paraphrase, right? To be able to explain the results in your own words, right? Peter discovered that on average, those asked to drink diet sodas lost more weight, gives us the number, than those drinking water, gives us the number, okay? The other thing is that, like, there needs to be a level of detail here in order to understand how they came to the results they came to and what those results actually mean. We do need to understand how they did the study, right? There's a lot in this particular piece about the fact that one of these was a randomized controlled study. The other one is an observational study, a cohort study. The randomized controlled study is supposed to be better because it eliminates variables. One of the things the author had to do here was explain those two different study designs and why one is supposed to be better so that we can then talk about, well, what's the problem here? Tata's got a great point here. I like the addition of the differences between the two authors. The description of their studies gives the reader a better understanding how they came up with the results. One of the things we do see here is the movement back and forth between the piece. Fowler, on the other hand, did a cohort or longitudinal study. We are comparing the two as we write. So it's not just like, bang, here's a paragraph about this one, bang, here's a paragraph about this one. Yes, that is true, but the wording in those opening sentences kind of lets the reader here know about how you're transitioning. What's different about this one? Why are we swapping paragraphs? Why is this a new topic? Well, we're comparing the kinds of studies we've got here. Okay, Noel also noted here that he likes the parentheses around extra information. This was a hotly debated topic. Some of you really hated it. Some of you really liked it. I don't know that I have a particular stance. I think grammatically it is fine. But there might be other ways to do this. I just thought it was fun that you guys either really liked or really hated it. All right, so Lauren and Kayla, and probably some others here, both noted this starts with a question. Now, I typically tell you guys don't use questions in your papers, but the reason this particular one works is it's truly a rhetorical question. Okay, there is no answer. You guys have always been taught to write the "Do you ever wonder blah 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 blah?" If someone says no to that, they have no reason to continue reading their paper, right? That there is an answer to that question. This is a truly rhetorical question. What it is doing is posing a question that the author is immediately going to answer. Why is there a discrepancy if these two studies were looking at the same thing? Okay, and then we go and immediately answer it. Lauren notes that makes the readers wonder about the two studies' outcomes and then kind of leads them to an answer. Absolutely, that's what's going on here, and I think it's just a really good writing technique. All right, so Noel noted here that he likes it when we've come together and compared the two pieces, right? So we've kind of laid out what each one does, and now we're kind of getting into both the comparison between them and then what impact it has. Again, I think that's really critical. You might not need to compare the study design in your two studies because they might be very similar. You might be comparing something else. But I do think there needs to be a certain amount of comparison here as we look back and forth. One quick note here, just to clarify, Brandon knows, well, this isn't how we've been citing sources. You're right, this does look like a citation. It's an explanation of what the control group was. Water drinkers, right? This down here around study is the citation. Again, it's a paraphrase. There's no author, and so what we do, it uses the first word in the works cited citation. Okay. Again, we've got another rhetorical question here. I think what's happened is that the author has laid out in this sentence, starting with given here, that it looks like kind of pay-for-play research, and then, so we have to ask a question. Well, is that dismissible? Well, and then we go into some specifics about that. All right, so there was a pretty wide agreement that the ending was too abrupt, and that may be totally an accurate criticism, okay? Now, I do want to distinguish between abrupt and strong, because there are some of the comments were like, well, the author should have said here which one was better. I think we need to recognize that your conclusion might have a lot of gray area in it. And that is a reasonable conclusion, okay? They do each tell us something. It's just that neither of them actually answers the question, do diet sodas help people lose weight? That's the strong answer here. Neither of these answer that question. They both give us kind of like research related to the question, but they don't answer it. And I think it's okay to embrace the gray area, okay? You can't ever say, we'll never know the answer. But you can say, this is what this one actually shows, this is what this one actually shows, and this is what we can take away from it. And that's a real goal with this essay, is trying to be able to sort of explain what's the takeaway. Okay? All right. Now, if you guys have any questions along the way, as always, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always here to help. Glad to answer questions.